Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest in a special series of shows that we're publishing all of this week here on the Art of Procurement. That's right, if you missed the news, we're doing something a little bit different this week. We've got 5 different shows to be published with procurement thought leaders, and each one of them will go live Monday through Friday of this week. The interviews aren't really the typical Art of Procurement interview. Think of them more as a mini or a bite-sized show. So I'm targeting around 20 minutes for each discussion. The interviews are part of what we're calling the Big Idea Week, and they're part of Procurious Big Idea Summit. So it's kind of a lead up to the summit, with each guest being a keynote speaker at the upcoming event. So today, my guest is Gabe Perez. So Gabe is the Vice President of Strategy and Market Development at Coupa. Gabe's really an expert in the procurement technology space. He's truly a sought-after speaker at procurement events. I know that I've seen him speak a couple of times myself, and he's frequently found really helping organizations understand how the concept of software as a service and software as a service solutions are changing really the ways that companies do business. So in our discussion, you're going to hear me ask Gabe a number of questions related to procurement technology. And to be honest, I'll openly admit that this is an area of procurement that I'm a lot less familiar with. So I was interested to understand really how the impact that the pace of change and of technological change is having on procurement, and really to separate what's hype and what's reality. That coming from an expert, when I look at it, my view is probably, I'm not looking at it with an expert view. So I was interested to hear that from Gabe. Before we do go into the show, I just want to say that if you find value in the content that we share on the Art of Procurement, I would love it if you could sign up to receive a notification every time a new episode is published. That just makes sure that you never miss a show. It comes straight into your inbox. So to sign up, you just head over to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. Leave your email address, or you can look at there's a sign-up bar on the top of the Art of Procurement homepage. Pop in your email there, and I'll send you an email every time we publish another episode. Okay, well, with all that being said, let's cue the music and go straight into the interview. So hi everybody, and I'm excited to welcome Gabe Perez, the Vice President of Strategy and Market Development of Coupa, to today's Art of Procurement show. So Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil, for having me. Really excited to be here.
Thanks. Well, I shared some of your background with listeners as part of my introduction to the show, and so I wanted to start with the first question, and that's one that I ask most of my guests. And that's, how did you get into procurement? Was it something that you chose, or did it choose you?
It's funny. I was in college finishing up my marketing degree, and I took an operations class my senior year. And I was just amazed at the opportunity in the supply chain world and the inefficiencies in the supply chain world. I couldn't believe at that time, how important it was and how poorly a lot of this was being run. So that's when I went and got my master's in supply chain management. And wanted to be on the side where I could help people optimize that.
So you were probably one of the few that chose it strategically as a career rather than kind of fell into it.
Yeah. I've pretty much been in procurement since I got out of my master's, and
right.
It's been a really interesting area, and an area where I think is ripe for opportunity and disruption.
Well, I know that we both recently attended the Procurement Tech Summit here in the US, and something that really stood out to me was the potential for cognitive computing, really when it relates to procurement. And I'm interested to hear, with your background in the procurement software space, is that something that you see it has the potential to transform our profession, or at least remove some of the administrative management of tail spend, as an example, that is done manually today?
I do, but I think we're not there yet.
Right.
I think artificial intelligence, machine learning, cognitive technologies are the future. I think procurement has some basic things that they need to improve and become more strategic about before we get there. So, it's one of those topics that's really great, really interesting. We have to stay close to as an industry. But I think it's going to be a little bit more time before it really disrupts this industry. I don't know that people are mature enough to, have things like weather come and impact every part of their supply chain, their procurement in real time. Sounds good ideally. I don't think we're there yet.
Right, and I was actually going to follow that up with what are some of the basic things that you think we need to do right? And I certainly think one of them is, like you said, that the people are not necessarily ready or as fast to adapt and change as the technology.
Yeah, I mean, even if you had that technology and that real-time information, most companies wouldn't know what to do with it. If you enabled companies with the real-time information, they're not agile enough to act on it right now. So I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, we're still talking about some of the basic things in procurement that we've been talking about for years. And, whether people want to talk about it or not, savings is still how procurement is measured, and it's still a huge opportunity that I think CFOs and CEOs are realizing that is, underutilized. So that's obviously a big area. But I think too much we've thought of procurement as this centralized function where all the intelligence is there. But what's happened is with the e-commerce sell side, everybody at your company is a buyer.
Right.
So I think, at the end of the day, the thing that procurement team needs to do is figure out how to take their expertise, their knowledge, and really extend it to every desktop in the organization, and really even stop thinking about it as procurement, because really what procurement should be doing is enabling their organization to be more agile, get the things they need to do their job, the products, the services, the assistant, not buying stuff. It's really not a world of buying stuff anymore. It's really about enabling the business to get what they need to do their job.
Right. So if you kind of continuing down the route of trying to centralize and be the ones that hold the keys to the purse, if you will, is kind of a losing value proposition going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at a lot of organizations and the spend they have under management, you really start to examine it. One of the major problems is, very small numbers of people in the organization are actually actively participating in e-procurement or spend management initiatives. The tools are out there, the features are out there, but people aren't using them. And, really, whether you look at the tail of your suppliers, if you look at the users that are using it casually, they usually make up 80 to 90, 95% of your user base.
Right.
So once you start to include all of them, yeah, somebody might only transact a couple times a year, but in a 10,000 person organization, when you times that by 9,000, right, a lot of transactions that cause a lot of cost and pain and lost opportunity are, not being managed right now.
So it reminds me of something I heard around Dropbox, actually, and the fact that, they grew from an enterprise perspective because users wanted something that was nice and easy to use and that kind of fit with how they're used to using technology, and corporate solutions didn't. So everybody went and downloaded Dropbox, and Dropbox could then say, hey, do you know that 90% of your users are using this? Do you feel that if we don't adapt and recognize that everyone is a buyer, the buyers will just go and find their own technology and just use it kind of in a way that takes away the control?
It's happening as we speak. I mean, people don't come to work looking to try to negotiate better than procurement. They do the thing that's easiest for them, and usually that's going and getting the thing themselves. So it's about enabling the people to do the right thing and making, what Dropbox did is it was more of a pull. People wanted to use it. It wasn't being pushed on them and required.
Right.
And procurement needs to embrace that, where people want to engage in them because they see value in engaging, whether it's because they get what they want without even interacting with procurement, or procurement's adding value to the transaction. And, it's already happening constantly, where people have had mature solutions, mature procurement organizations, all the features in the world, and not driving the success and value that they set out to. And it's because they have to sort of take a step back, reset, and look at what their success goals are.
And so when it kind of ties into a question that I had about success, and, I've never been a buyer of procurement technology. I've been a long time user, obviously just being a practitioner for a number of years. And the biggest challenge I always saw was adoption, that software would be bought and then never really used. So I was interested to know, or to understand from your perspective, when you look at implementing software at new clients, what are the keys to driving that adoption that's necessary then for a client to receive the ROI that they expected?
I mean, in reality, the main key is that before you embark on any kind of project, whether it's procurement or not, you have to determine the value that you're trying to accomplish and put some measurable criteria in place. If you don't know exactly what the success is going to look like, when you start, you're already done before you start. And I think that's really where, why are you doing a transformation? Whether it's procurement, whether it's HR, whether it's CRM, why are you doing it? What's the value that you're trying to get out of it? And you need to align everything to that. And one of the big issues we've had in procurement is we keep going about things with RFXs and RFPs,
right.
But for things like as a service organization, right. It needs to be, what's the outcome you're trying to reach? Who's the best partner for that, and how are you guys going to work together to get there? Which regular RFP is not going to get you to.
That just allows you to buy off a scope or a specification. Nothing really more than that.
Yeah, and point evaluations are the issue right now, because in an as-a-service world, today is not the same as tomorrow, right? And the world is changing, and you can't look at things like a point in time. You have to look at things in value-based outcomes and how you're going to get there.
You mentioned having measurable criteria, and maybe this is just a naive question from me, not entirely understanding the space fully, but how do organizations measure the success of a procurement software solution? What should they be looking at determining what success looks like?
Yeah, and the answer to that question is going to be different depending on what your organization is trying to accomplish. Every company has overall strategic objectives, and one of the mistakes procurement makes is not aligning to those, because in reality, a lot of what companies are trying to do, what's in their 10K, their investor calls, there's actually strategic impact that a spend management initiative can have. So, it really depends. Now, it could be, eliminating paper. It could be realized savings versus identified savings. That's been a big miss for procurement. It could be electronic invoicing, processing times, headcount reduction or reallocation. So the answer isn't the same for everyone, but the point is, everybody gets funding for a project. And the reason you got funding is probably the value you're trying to get to. And everything needs to be based on that.
And then tied into the business performance or the financial performance of the business, ultimately.
Yeah, and it's something you have to not only set at the beginning, but it has to be the level playing ground throughout the whole implementation and the whole lifetime of your relationship. And if you end up hitting those goals, you got to set a new set of goals and continue to strive for those. And that's where when you hit that hard patch in a transformation, everybody in the room can look back to the success goals and say, well, it doesn't matter if the button's yellow or green. We're trying to reduce costs by $50 million. Right. It doesn't matter if that's the way we've always done it. We're trying to accomplish, 90% e-invoicing. Yeah. So those are how you level the playing field and really help with change management.
So let's shift focus. And I know that you're leading a session at the upcoming Procurious Big Idea Summit in London, which is next week, I think April 21st. And the focus was on inspiring delegates to really rethink what's possible. And I know that there was a nod towards a term that, I've heard before called Uberification. And I just wondered if you could just explain, what do you mean by Uberification?
Yeah, what do you call it? Uberification, Uberization. The reality of what's at home is that the sort of Uberization of the world, whether it's Uber, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Lyft, whether it's Etsy, whatever you want to call it, it's driving real-time value for everybody involved in the process. When you think about Uber, it's driving demand to drivers, who a lot of them didn't have a job, and you don't really need much qualification to do that. They'll even get you a car. But then it's also driving value to me as a consumer, where no matter where I am globally, I real-time have access to transportation. And everything about how you use things in your everyday life is value-based, and it's value on both sides. It's not just value for the end consumer, it's value for what we in the supplier, in the procurement world would call, quote unquote, the vendor or the supplier.
Right.
And, we continue to get with this as a service model and technology, provide more and more ways where everybody can access value in real time depending on the situation they're in.
Right. So what are the key challenges in the procurement space that you think that this has the potential to transform or address or impact in some way?
Well, it's a pretty big question. I think we've covered some of them earlier in terms of the internal, just the way we look at things with internal systems and processes and policies. But if you just take a step back and look at the procurement world, it's very similar to the Uber model, right? You've got the end user, right, which a lot of people would call that person that creates a request or, let's just extend it to spend management, creates an expense report or, submit some kind of spend via an invoice, and then you've got the driver or the vendor in our case, right? And we really have to look at both of those players and how do we make it simple, easy, and value-driven for them to participate. I mean, nobody gets enabled in their everyday life. Everything is activate and go. But then, one of the things I'm going to be talking about, everything we do in procurement is almost an unnatural act. It reminds me of a supplier reminds me of that guy in Manhattan on the subway who has an iPhone and a BlackBerry, right? Already had an iPhone, but in order to be enabled to make calls at work, she has to carry around 2 phones, right? The vendors already have all their technology, right? And then we're telling them they have to use our technology and what we picked, and we're trying to tell them there's going to be value, but there's really not.
So does that lead to the possibility of platforms? So I'm thinking about platforms and apps where, you have a platform that, just as an example, maybe the Apple operating system, and then the apps are everything that's on your home screen that do different things. Are we going to a world where, from a software perspective, you have these platforms that tie everything together, and then they may have a proprietary component to it, but then you're leveraging third-party apps to do very specific things that plug into it?
Yeah, I actually think in the procurement world, platform is the future, and it's already happening. But I'm not actually convinced that it's going to be via apps, because the unique part about what we do is there's the internal stakeholder, which you have a lot more say on what they do, and then there's the external stakeholder, which you really don't. And in the corporate world, right, if you think about it, people don't want to talk about it, but email and internet access is really all you need to start collaborating in the corporate world, and it happens all the time, especially with so many small businesses in the world. So, I think it's more about having an open API and being to connect, because it's such a disparate infrastructure in the spend management world and in the ERP landscape. I mean, suppliers don't want to log onto a portal, but they also don't want to use an app, right? It's the same kind of burden where, if you look at our personal life, it's different because I already have that iPhone. Yeah. So you already have that window into the world, right, where I can get all my personal stuff. Well, the suppliers already have their AR systems and their internal spend management systems, and now we're asking them to do something outside of that, right, which is where it becomes unnatural. So I do think connecting via a platform is critical. But I'm not convinced, because of all the different type of stakeholders in this business process, that apps are going to be the way.
Right. So it's more something it's more seamless. That
it's not seamless and includes IT, right? Yeah. It brings another layer of IT. Right. And if you're a 50,000 person organization, you don't just put an app on a phone. There's security. Are you using company phone or not? Suppliers don't want to use apps. So I think the ability to connect and be open to connecting in any way possible is how a platform is really evolving our space.
So going away from the concept of closed networks as an example, just being a lot more open and not kind of restricting usage.
Yeah, not only open, but I think also redefining what a network is, right? You think of the Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Right. That hasn't worked in the network. Right. They've been built and they haven't come, because at the end of the day, there's hundreds of million suppliers in this world. So, it's really about, a network should mean connecting, whether it's via email, CXML, EDI, portal, right? Whatever technology it is, but it's not, you have to be on this portal, right? Because if you think of where that model came from, it was a vendor benefited model, right? Because once you connect on a portal, you can get visibility in the spend, you can charge, you can, that was all in the interest of the software vendor. Yep. And it goes back to, there's got to be value on both sides. Right. Suppliers don't see value in portals.
Well, I have a final question that I ask all of my guests during the series of Big Idea interviews that I just wanted to pose to you, and it's a little bit more tactical, I think, so that anyone who's listening can kind of take one thing away and maybe apply that to what they do in their everyday work. And that's, what's the one thing that you think a procurement professional can do today to really increase the value that he or she provides to his or her stakeholders?
I think really redefining what value is. Value is a buzzword going around in procurement, but it's something that's talked about and not executed on, quite frankly, right? It's one of those things that all these conferences, all these talks about, what is value to you and your organization, and what's the best way to get there? And I think one of the most important ways to do that is to align to the strategic values and initiatives of your organization and show how procurement can have a seat at the table with the CEO. But it's really redefining it. Look through every single interaction you're having, not with what you know or how you've done it in the past, but what value you're trying to deliver, and cut out the things that don't provide value, right? So many times procurement thinks something provides value
right.
in part of their productivity definition of a job, but then you go on the end user side, and it's not only not seen as value, it's seen as a bottleneck.
Yes.
It's seen as it's harder for me to get what I want. People don't come to work trying to harm the procurement team or maliciously go against the process. They just take the path of least resistance. So I really think you really have to define what value is to you and your organization, what value-based outcomes you're trying to achieve, and reset your focus based on that and challenge anything that doesn't fit in that mold. And that's not easy, but I really think that, value is so loosely used, you have to, put it in a box and figure out what it means to you.
Right. And I'm guessing that, it's very specific to individual companies. There's no one size fits all. There's so many different factors that play into what value means to one company versus another, depending on whether they're trying to save money, whether they're trying to innovate and grow. So it's very specific based on your individual circumstance.
It's specific, but it always can be quantified. Even if the value is I want to provide a better experience, right? That better experience is going to take less of your employees' time.
Right.
You're going to get more data, more visibility. So the challenge is define it, but don't define it loosely. Define it in a way that's measurable, a way that's achievable, and a way that provides accountability to everybody in the process. And I think that's where procurement really has an opportunity, and they haven't always executed.
Right.
Because so many times you have these basic MBOs and KPIs that they're measuring that are very, very old school way of thinking. And quite frankly, they mess up their process just to make sure their MBOs are being hit,
right.
because that's how they're measured. So you really, you say, well, I've saved this much. And then when you ask the question, well, the way we measure savings is this, and they've done that so they can get their bonus.
Right.
And I don't blame them, because that's how they're measured. So you really got to redefine what value is and challenge yourself to quantify it.
So it could be an example I think of is in marketing space, where marketing really wants to be able to spend more of the budget that you save for them, not have money taken away. We'll find what's important to them, find how they're delivering value and what the metric is they're placing on it. So how do you contribute to them achieving their metrics, not how much money have you saved and therefore that you've not enabled them to do their job.
Exactly. There's different departments that won't care about the savings.
Right.
Marketing is a great example. Right? They're trying to drive leads, they're trying to drive sales. And the value is finding the best partner, right? And if the best partner can't be part of your process because you've made it so difficult,
right.
You've already closed out that potential winner, right? That could be in the tail of your spend.
Yeah, and they will go and do their own thing anyway to make sure they can hire that supplier.
Yeah, procurement has to show the value, show up what it means to your stakeholders, and also become the path of least resistance so that people want to interact with it. The same way that at home, I interact with Google because I know when I put something in the box, I'm going to find what I need, right? And it's not the same way at work.
Well, Gabe, I'm kind of leave it there for today, and thank you so much for your time, and also for connecting with me in advance of your presentation at the Big Idea Summit. So just before we finished, is there a way that listeners can reach out to you or anybody at Coupa if they'd like to learn more, or perhaps a blog that they can check out that has more of your thinking?
Yeah, so Coupa.com has all of my blogs as well. The one we're talking about today was posted on Procurious. I can be reached anytime at gabe@coupa.com. If you go to our website, you can see live demonstrations of the application. But looking forward to talking with you more and the Big Ideas event, really challenging procurement to step up our game.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to include all those links and show notes from today's discussion and for all of the episodes of the Big Idea Week here on the Art of Procurement, including details on how you can register as a digital delegate for the Big Idea Week. You can find all that information out at artofprocurement.com/bigidea2016. That's artofprocurement.com/bigidea2016. So Gabe, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Procurement. To find an archive of all past episodes, you can go to artofprocurement.com/episodes. And to ensure you never miss another show, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe.